It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. This is Eric Dudas, and I'm joined as always by the co-host of Fully Threaded. He's the hardest working man in the online fastener sourcing world, and a guy who's never seen a cap screw he couldn't classify. He's Brian Musker. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. Actually, probably a number of cap screws I couldn't classify, but still, a decreasing number.
That's right. Well, I haven't seen one yet. Hey, thanks for joining us, everyone. It's episode 17, and this episode will be uploaded to the fullythreaded.com website on January 13th, 2011.
Yes, welcome to all our listeners, and welcome to the first episode of the new year.
That's right, Season 2, the second big season of FTR. I think we've got a strong lineup to get the year kicked off. And to get things rolling, we'll hear from Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International magazine with the Fastener News Report. Then we'll talk with Buddy Blattner of Active Screw and Fastener and Ross Schell of Red Idea Partners, and they're going to talk mergers and acquisitions in sort of a redux of their panel discussion presentation at the Vegas show in November, but this time they'll do it in the conversational, fully threaded style. Then we'll talk to the man formerly known as the most experienced fastener professional in the unemployment line, and I'm speaking of Todd Walters, a longtime fastener industry member who's been in between positions, and he'll be sharing some of his thoughts and perspectives from that side of things. So it's a good, strong lineup for the first show of 2011, and once again, thanks for joining us, everyone. And you're always invited to communicate with us at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com, and check out our Twitter posts, which come out intermittently under the handle Fully Threaded. We're the people behind FastenersClearinghouse.com and the FCH Sourcing Network, where you're always welcome to come when you're looking for a hard-to-find item or you're looking to make a spot buy. It's a search engine that has, at this point, well over 500,000 line items in it, and it's available free of charge to use. And we also encourage you to think of us when you're looking to move some of that slower moving inventory, or more and more, we're being used just as kind of a sales channel, aren't we, Bri?
Yep. So we're seeing more and more of that as more companies put their full catalog online with us.
And that is excellent to see. The search engine has been experiencing very strong traffic for January, and that's a positive thing to see as well. We did get kind of an expected lull around the holidays, but the fastener industry seems to be back in full force as we record this broadcast. We're always looking to find ways to improve the database and make little tweaks here and there. And Brian, you're kind of in charge of that part of things. And what have you been working on lately? What's the latest with the FCH database?
Right. Well, a few things that should make things pretty good for our users and members. We've completed the split up of all of the socket head cap screws into three different types, the three divisions: button head socket cap screws, flathead socket cap screws, and the ordinary socket cap screws. And all members' parts existing have already been reclassified into those groups, okay? We've also created a new commodity type called electronic hardware after some encouragement from some of our members, Joe Truckee being one of them from Cal. And what this does is creates a new group for some of our members who really have a lot of this electronic components, be they card extractors or standoffs and all sorts of things.
What about those swage sleeves?
Swage sleeves, another thing. We've created a page specially for cable fasteners or cable fittings, actually.
Okay, yeah, I know we had a big upload of those recently.
Right. We have also, as a result of some suggestions from our members, we've created a new function on our site which we call the Remember Me feature. This allows you the system to remember who you are, basically.
So in other words, users don't need to remember their name and password every time they log in. Is that how it happens?
Yeah. Once they've logged in, the system will set a little cookie. You have to have cookies enabled, and it will remember them from then on. Okay.
Oh, cool. Onward and upward.
All right. Yep.
Seems like there's more and more call for various industrial supply related to fastener inventory that we've been experiencing lately, doesn't it?
Well, demand and also supply from the people who are loading the fasteners up with us.
Well, that's what I meant.
And people searching for them. Right. Not necessarily the same. But tools are used to fasten up fasteners. And so even though we didn't really start off trying to list tools, we just happen to have a lot of them and we just want to do a better job of listing them.
Right.
And I should also mention that we are tweaking the search engine the way it deals with the sizes of rivets. This is as a result of some help from Rocky Mountain Rivet. And it will help us to specify the size better. Rivet really has a diameter and a grip range, and our own method of specifying sizes doesn't handle the range that well, but very shortly it'll do it great.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I can think of at least several FCH members who are going to benefit from that.
Right.
Well, good stuff.
Right, and some of these ones really are based on suggestions from long-time members and very good members of ours. So we look forward to suggestions and ways we can improve FCH from anyone.
Well, not anyone.
Well, especially especially members, okay? We listen to them first, right?
Well, before we get on to the meat and potatoes of this episode, out traveling around in the blogosphere, our friend Traveling Salesman I saw had put up a post recently about our mergers and acquisitions feature that we're going to be having coming up here with Buddy and Ross. And, on that subject, it never ceases to just amaze me how I can be, at the gym or anywhere, and through my phone I can send up a Twitter post, and then somebody, a blogger, might pick it up and write a post about it, and then I can feed back, and on it goes. It's just an amazing thing to me.
Now, I have to tell you that the thought of carrying my phone around the gym to me would be horrific, okay? I think times at the gym are much better used for wandering around and showing and looking at all the different types of cap screws that bolt equipment together.
Yeah, I have seen you doing that lately.
Right. I think I might have given you a lesson at one of the gyms about showing all the different types of cap screws.
That's true. A couple of months ago, they came in and they bolted down a whole bunch of the equipment. Like they did the squat rack and they did a whole bunch of the machines, and I don't exactly understand why. I mean, it's not like those things are going to be moving very easily, but it made me wonder. These things are studs that they put into the floor. What kind of steel would they use for something like that? I mean, these things have got to be just ultra heavy duty.
Well, I think actually I was watching them drill some of them out. They use wedge anchors, another one of our many different commodities that we have. They don't have to be that strong really, because there's not a great upward lift on it. They're just trying to stop them from slithering across the floor, I guess. And they didn't really fit them very correctly either.
Yeah, I see that. A lot of them have lost their nuts.
Right.
But there is an abundance of hardware at the gym, that's for sure. All the different machines and so forth. But the point is that you can be anywhere and send a post or send an update to your Facebook or your LinkedIn account, and that was really the point I was trying to make. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I have achieved a whole lot of communication just this afternoon, for example, setting up the next fully threaded episode, and I did almost all of it through social networking. Now, there was another post that Traveling Salesman did recently, and it had to do with the lineup of fastener shows coming up in 2011. I mean, this thing is an impressive compendium. Did you take a look at this, Bri?
Yes, I did. And not that I made a post to Traveling Salesman. He'll probably make some comment about, but I suppose it shows that there is forward thinking in the fastener industry. If no one cared, they wouldn't have fastener shows, I guess, in the end.
Well, they're certainly expanding internationally. There's the new one in Brazil, and Maybe if we play our cards right, who knows? Maybe we'll get an invitation to one of them.
I don't know where the one in Brazil is. I guess it must be Sao Paulo, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. I drove past it. I never went and stopped there.
Well, it's probably more realistic that we'll be making a couple of the more nearby shows, including the Branson, Missouri show, the All-American, coming up in May. And just this afternoon, I spoke to Heidi Voltrauer, who's putting that show together, and she's going to be joining us for the next episode 18 of Fully Threaded. So look forward to talking with her.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And in other Fastener Show related news, I see that the NFDA is heading to Stuttgart coming up in February. That's February 22nd through the 24th. And they have put out an invitation for any fastener company to get involved with some of the programs they're offering. And some of these programs are actually pretty interesting if you're looking to get your name out there in Stuttgart. They actually have 3 separate programs, and they range all the way from just having your promotional material out there on the floor all the way to something they're calling the Gold Key Matchmaking Program, which is, I guess, being facilitated in some way by the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's open to everyone, not just NFDA members, although there are some pretty good price breaks if you are an FDA member. And you should check out the NFDA website for details, and that's at nfda-fastener.org.
Okay, and that's really, a great example of what Jim Derry spoke about in terms of their internationalization of the NFDA.
That's right, and it's good to see. And before we get to the Fastener News Report with Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International, I saw a tweet fly by a little while ago from Mike, and he's developing an article about parts washing for their February issue, and he's invited submissions for that. So if you have something for the story, you can send it to him at the email address mcnulty@fastenertech.com, and who knows, maybe you'll get your name in print in that fine magazine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So with that, why don't we get the show going, and we'll bounce over to our friend Mike McNulty from Fastener Technology International.
Thanks, Eric. Happy New Year, Eric and Brian, and to all the Fully Threaded radio listeners out there. This is Mike McNulty with the Fastener News Report, brought to you by Fastener Technology International, the print and digital magazine for the entire global fastener industry. Reporting on location here in Ohio, we lost all 20-plus inches of our December snow to a miniature heat wave, but we are now have an expanding fresh coating of snow that coincides nicely with a fresh start of the new year. Many people have called the last 10 years a lost decade, so I'm anxious to start a new one and give you the first Fastener News Report of 2011. Our lead story for this episode is that the Fastener Fair Stuttgart opens its doors next month in Germany, more than a half a year ahead of its typical October staging. New owner Mac Brooks moved the timing of this biennial exhibition to February, shortly after it took over the show, following its record-breaking staging in 2009. The show has grown to be the biggest of its kind, not only in Europe, but in the entire world. Over 600 exhibitors will be showing off their fastener and fixing products and services in 3 exhibit halls, occupying more than 130,000 square feet of floor space. For comparison, this show fills nearly twice as much space as the NIFS West show in Las Vegas, which is the largest fastener show in North America. A big difference between the 2 shows is that the exhibit stands in Germany tend to be larger and more elaborate than the ones in Las Vegas, and visitors in Europe often spend more time at each exhibition stand that they visit. Suzanne Rauberger, Fastener Fair Stuttgart Exhibition Director, says that the industry sectors, such as machine tool, automotive, picking up, and the end result is increased demand for fastener and fixing technology. Exhibitors are coming from 36 countries. They include suppliers of fasteners and construction fixing technologies, as well as machinery, materials, and tooling for making, treating, inspecting, and packaging fasteners and fixings. The city has good transportation, lodging, dining, and entertainment options, and it is home to several famous manufacturers, including Daimler, Porsche, and Bosch. I have been to this show, and while it has a definite European slant, I think that it offers something for any fastener professional. Germany is an easy country to travel to and around, and Fastener Fair Stuttgart is well worth the trip if you can manage the time and the money to attend. If you go, be sure to sample a locally brewed Dinkelöcker, one of my favorite German beers. Now on to our Fastener Newsmaker highlights. A. Lyons & Company Incorporated, located in Manchester, Massachusetts, has announced the formation of its fastener division, which will be headed up by 20-year fastener industry veteran Rick Fine, VP of Industrial Products. A. Lyons specializes in importing and supplying fasteners, nails, and other industrial components. Manufacturer and distributor of blind rivet nuts and specialty fasteners, Sherex Fastening Solutions of Tonawanda, New York, has launched its totally redesigned website, available to be seen at www.sherex.com. The new site includes 3D models and rivet installation videos. Industrial distributor Falcon Metal Corporation, located in Boca Raton, Florida, will be featured on a TV series called 21st Century Business. The show will focus on Falcon's ability to help its customers reduce their production parts, including fasteners. Daco Precision, located in Kewaskum, Wisconsin, a supplier of special washers and stampings, has hired Gary Zick for inside sales and customer service. Austin Weber also returns to the company full-time after receiving a degree in business administration and supply chain management. Austin will assume responsibilities on both the procurement and sales side of the business. Vergnet of France is now using Rotobolt fasteners from James Walker Rotobolt on its wind turbines. The M90 fasteners are being used on the main structural joint where the two halves of the turbine housing are joined together. Dorkin, the manufacturer of corrosion protection coating systems, has opened a new technical center in Shanghai, China. With existing operations in the USA and Germany, Dorkin coatings are used on a variety of parts and components, including fasteners, springs, bracket clips, and stamped parts and components. Italy's Manisero has been appointed the new exclusive sales agent in Italy, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein for Nakashimada fastener making equipment. Nakashimada has customers all over the world, and it designs and builds microformers, double-stroke headers, and multi-die headers. Manisero has been in the fastener market for 20 years, and it also deals in the trade of second-hand fastener machines. Dr. Christoph Müller-Metterer has been named the new sales and marketing director on the board of Wafios AG in Germany. His predecessor, Egon Reich, who filled this seat over many years, prematurely handed over his position at his own request. Wafios is a machine builder offering equipment for making all types of fasteners and wire-form parts. The annual holiday party of the Pacific West Fastener Association, also known as PAC West, based in California, took place December 2, 2010, and more than 180 PAC West members and industry representatives participated in the festivities. Organized by Rebecca Day of Exact Industries, Holly McDaniel of WCL Company, and John Gaudet of Metric and Multi-Standard Components, the event featured a Toys for Tots collection, gifts, prizes, games, food, drink, and musical entertainment by the Boomers, featuring Mark Jajola from Vertex on the drums. Our final newsmaker highlight is that Ring Screw LLC of Troy, Michigan is expanding its fastener making operations with a $5 million investment. Helped by a tax credit from the state of Michigan, the expansion is expected to create 150 jobs over the next 5 years. Now on to fastener events on the horizon. Mack Brooks continues to expand the reach of its Fastener Fair trade fairs. Last year it announced a new show in India, and this month it has unveiled Fastener Fair Brazil, which will take place in Sao Paulo this November. Brazil's economy is expanding, and it expects to capitalize on the infrastructure improvements being made in advance of the country hosting the World Cup in 2014 and the Olympics in 2016. Fastener Tech 11 continues to add educational opportunities to go along with its exhibiting and networking opportunities. 2 sessions have been added. The first is called Effectively Expand Your Domestic Fastener Supply Base and Find Technical Data in Seconds by Joe Greenslade of the Industrial Fasteners Institute. And the second session is titled Trends in Social Networking for Fastener Professionals, which will be presented by the world-famous host of Fully Threaded Radio, Eric Dudas. The Industrial Fasteners Institute and Fully Threaded Radio are supporters of Fastener Tech 11, which takes place in June of this year. Other sessions are in the works, including the possibility of a roundtable on computer simulation. Turning to the back page of our report, I have 2 stories, one which is fastener related and the other which is not. This year, Vaughan Jones Socket Screws Limited of Wetherby, Yorkshire, England, will be celebrating its 50th year in business. The company started out in Scotland and moved to its present facility in 1972. The company makes special fasteners and turn parts for customers in the UK and abroad. In the early days, each worker operated one machine for up to 40 hours per week. Today, automatic machinery runs without operators around the clock, giving Vaughan Jones a 168-hour work week. The company has survived for 50 years by continuous investment in modern technology. Managing Director Jeremy Hornby tells me that over the last 10 years, the company has invested millions in new machinery. Jeremy has worked in the company for over 35 years, and he's looking forward to the next 50. He says if you're going to survive, you have to invest in the best. This is good advice for all fastener-related companies. Finally, as a sports fan, I was drawn to an interesting report on the academic performance of college athletes. A news and information website called the Daily Beast assembled lists of the best and worst colleges, ranked according to the combined NCAA academic progress ratings of the school's football and basketball teams, both men and women. Over 60 schools in 6 major Division I conferences and a few independent schools were evaluated. And the 10 smartest teams in order are Northwestern, Notre Dame, Missouri, Duke, Ohio State, Vanderbilt, Illinois, Penn State, Kansas, and West Virginia. Interestingly, only one of these schools had its football team finish in the top 10 of this year's final National Football Polls. It was Ohio State, my alma mater, which is also the same place where 5 football players have been penalized for unwisely giving away team awards in exchange for cash and tattoos. Also of interest was the fact that the 2 schools that played for the football national championship this week both showed up on the list of the worst teams academically. Oregon had the 10th lowest score, and Auburn locked up the spot as the 5th dumbest team in the country. This has been Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International bringing you the Fastener News Report. Visit fastenertech.com to learn more about the fastener industry and send your news, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at mcnulty@fastenertech.com.
Buddy Blattner talks M&A coming up next.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, or just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Matt Allard with the Summel Products in Des Moines, Iowa, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
As we launch the second season of Fully Threaded, the economy remains at the top of the headlines, and the fastener industry is watching closely along with everyone else. We've noted during several previous episodes the fact that changes of ownership do happen in the fastener business, and especially during times like we're experiencing right now. With us today to discuss some of the finer points of mergers and acquisitions, we have Buddy Blattner, President and CEO of Active Screw and Fastener. They're based in Skokie, Illinois, and Ross Schell of Red Idea Partners, a strategic consulting firm operating out of Boulder, Colorado. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. You had noted that the economy creates a lot of interest in this sort of topic. We're happy to be here. Buddy and I had a chance to participate on a panel recently in November at the NIFS West show on this very topic, on mergers and acquisitions, commonly referred to as M&A, and we're excited to be able to offer you a few of our perspectives given we had a chance to do that in Vegas recently.
What was the turnout like at NIFS for you?
We had about 60 or 65 people attend the panel, which we thought was quite well attended. And I think on a practical level, probably two things driving that interest. One is, I think, any kind of economic turbulence, businesses get revalued, and I think there was certainly attendees who simply wanted to listen in and understand what's happening with valuations and how to reshape their perspective on their own business. And I think the second reason is there's always a slew of new activity that you tend to see in mergers and acquisitions as a result of economic turbulence and downturns. And typically what I've seen is buyers and sellers will usually wait until the dust has started to settle enough that they can begin to engage in a conversation around those sorts of opportunities without the decline rapidly continuing. They like to get the water settled, and you started to see that a lot in the last 12 months.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, as we were talking before we started recording here, we've touched on this subject a couple of times during previous Fully Threaded episodes. So I'm very glad you gentlemen could join us today. What was the format of your panel discussion out there?
Eric, I actually played your role. I was the moderator, and we had Buddy as the lead panelist representing Active and really representing the voice of the buyer. Active, I'll let you tell more about your own business, Buddy, but Active is currently looking across the country for strategic acquisition opportunities and completed one last April. And then we had two other gentlemen, one who represented a investment banking perspective, and then another gentleman who represented a commercial banking perspective.
Sorry, I missed that. Well, as Ross just mentioned, Buddy, if you could, why don't we get things kicked off on your side? And if you could, please describe Active Screw for us a little bit and explain to us a little bit about your current drive to expand using M&A.
Well, Active is a privately held company by the same family for over 70 years. We've been a distributor of fasteners and small parts. Specifically, the last 15 years, we've specialized in VMI programs to major Fortune 100 type companies, usually in 1 to 2 of their locations. We are small enough that we really focus on the customer, but big enough to provide a full suite of services. We started our acquisition program a year and a half ago at sort of the height of the recession. Our goal was to try to build our customer base very quickly. I personally have a lot of M&A experience buying companies for other portfolio companies, and thought this was the best way to grow our company quickly, add new customers, and add new product lines for our company.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and you actually answered several of my other questions right out of the chute there. The main question being, why would you merge? Why don't we flip that over and ask the question, why would you sell, or why would you take advantage of an M&A from a seller's standpoint typically?
Sure, Eric. There's a lot of different reasons that drive seller mentality around being ready to be acquired or sell. It runs a gamut from owner being ready to retire, a death or an estate transition. Sometimes you have internal ownership disagreement, and selling is the best way to resolve those disagreements. Often, and more positively, an owner or shareholder is looking for a successful positive liquidity event. A subset of that is wealth diversification. Owners who have built up significant value or wealth in a singular company who may or may not be ready for retirement, but simply don't want the singular risk anymore of a lone asset that is valuable, that is not diverse. Timing plays a big role. Sellers often want to try to exit either mid-cycle or top of a cycle if they're able to have the luck or foresight to know that that cycle is there. There are other reasons. Sometimes it's literally as simple as somebody's ready for a lifestyle change, or they're tired. They're just ready to do something different, ready to let somebody else take the reins.
Eric and Brian, sometimes companies get to a point where people just don't know what to do anymore. They don't know whether they can grow. They don't know how to grow. They don't know how to deal with some of the market things that are going on. And there are some, quite frankly, more sophisticated people out there who do know how to deal with those things. And we want to try to provide the opportunity for sellers that are scared or uncertain or whatever to either join a company that has the resources available to do that or doesn't know what to do next.
So if I'm a seller or somebody looking to move on or join up with a larger, more sophisticated company, how do I even go about beginning to search out a potential buyer? And I suppose there are some issues associated with that. Perhaps in a lot of cases, maybe you want to do that on kind of a confidential basis. What's that all about? How does that work?
Well, since we're a buyer, the buyer and the seller perspective is pretty much the same. You're going to need some help. And the way that works generally is to, it's like getting a job. It's all about networking. You can send out applications and you can send out emails and you can do all that stuff, but really you should be talking to the people that you know and the people that you know and the people that know you and your company the best. And that's generally in a smaller company, a company's accountant, but it may be a bank, it may be a lawyer, and you may have a friend who's somebody like Ross who knows something about business, because generally entrepreneurs know a lot about what they do and not much about the rest of the world. And so this is that time when you need to leverage all of your personal relationships to try to find a way to find that person. It's very rare that a company like ours goes public and says, we want to buy companies. We want you to contact us, and we're going to tell you who we are and what we're trying to do. That is very unusual. Most people do this sort of in secret.
Well, why are you taking this unusual approach? Why is it that you're doing it this way as opposed to the typical ways you just mentioned?
Well, we're taking an aggressive approach because we've tried all the networking ways, and while we've bought one company through that whole networking process, this process is complicated and time-consuming, and most people need to also run their business while they're creating a search. So especially in the depth of a recession, of which we haven't seen in my lifetime, we still have to run our company. So we're paying reasonably good money to get good advice and somebody to do the digging for us. And that's what practically anyone on the buy or sell side will ultimately have to do. Not that many people are going to call you up and say, will you buy my company, please?
Yeah. So for a company that's looking, say a potential buying company that's looking to acquire other companies, what sort of preparation should they really do then to get themselves in the right position?
On the buyer side, I think that the key work that goes into that question is getting very clear about the rationale that's driving the desire. In other words, what kind of business do you want to buy? What attributes does it have? Why? Do you want to make several acquisitions, or are you looking for one key acquisition? Buyers need to be clear about what they're looking for in terms of synergistic products, additional customers, customer diversity, locations, geography. They need to be extremely clear about whether or not they're looking for a team, particularly a leader on the seller side who stays on or transitions out. They need to be clear about whether they want to make an outright acquisition or whether they'd be open to a merger of some sort. So really the key work goes into making sure that the strategy is clear and that the criteria is reflective of the strategy, and that there's then a pathway to act on that. In Buddy's case, as he just described, that there's a team of people either internally as well as externally that are then out searching for specifically those matches. It also is something that buyers have to expect, that it is a process that does take some patience. It's also something where there is competition. We're probably surprised to see at times how much activity there is around specific target prospects who are sellers out in the market. There's also just the expectation of knowing how much effort will go into it and being prepared for that. As Buddy pointed out, you got to be able to continue to run your business in the meantime.
And it seems to me that you also got to have a pretty good plan of how do you actually deal with the company that, say, you've acquired it. I mean, some companies have teams of people that they just move into that company to help with the process. I mean, I myself have been in a company once that's been acquired and then that became an acquiring company. And we had to have, you have to make sure the transition takes place smoothly.
Buddy, you want to take a stab at that one?
I don't think your question is on the line. It's probably the most important question after culture fit and after the leader of a company. Just sort of to finish the preparation thing, the most important thing for a leader of a company that's selling is to understand what they're doing and what they want to do going forward. I say this in the nicest possible way. The most important thing for a seller to do is to make sure that they understand that their employees, their vendors, and their customers have been sold. and that somebody else is the manager now and making the decision. If they do appreciate and understand that, the integration process that Brian brought up is going to be a lot easier. We have a team of individuals who are responsible for bringing a new company on board. We've done two things. In general, what we're trying to do ultimately is to get to the point where when we walk in the door on the first day, aside from new business cards and coffee cups and swag, that systems are ready and that systems are available and that we've been able to develop a list of things that we're going to do. We winged it the first couple of times that I did it 20 years ago, but today it almost comes as second nature to us as to what you do first and what you do 10th and what you do 20th and what's important and not important. So we've got a pretty good binder as to how that goes. And in fact, after 9 months, the first acquisition that we made went live 100% on active system on December 1st, and it was flawless. It was the best single integration I've ever been involved with.
Yeah, actually seems to me that in my own experience that actually being acquired by a company that had some experience at it was actually much better than being acquired at another time with someone who had never done it before. One was a mess and one actually went really pretty easily.
Yeah, you have to have a plan and you have to execute that plan. And quite frankly, you have to be ruthless about that plan. Because when you don't get cooperation on all sides, it will fail.
So on top of getting very proficient at that type of transitional work, you're probably also very good at anticipating that and identifying a good fit for a merger in the first place.
Well, like I started out, the hardest thing that you do is try to find people that you like, because you're going to be living with these people, whether you're acquiring, 3 people or dozens of people. Most of the time, this is like, a marriage, a relationship, whatever. You got to have good people on all sides of these transactions. So these things fail most of the time, not from the business proposition. Business proposition is usually pretty good. Sometimes people pay too much. Sometimes people pay too little. But generally, they don't work because people don't like each other. And when they don't like each other, if there's not a good fit culturally or emotionally, it's just not going to work. And so bringing back to my last point, if there's a leader of a company who comes to a new company and doesn't want to play along, doesn't want to be an advocate for the new company, people aren't going to understand who their loyalty is to. And we make that clear from our company right away.
Well, the other big component of any deal, I have to imagine, is the dollars and cents involved. And coming to a value for a company has got to be a major part of the deal, at least in the mid stages, I would imagine. Talk about that a little bit if you could.
The hardest thing to do is determine this kind of valuation because, most of the businesses in the fastener company world are under $25 million in sales. I'd say 97% of them are below that number. There's no good marketplace for comparing the valuations of that like there is in the public marketplace. If you're a big publicly traded company, there are other companies generally like you who you can compare to. In our business, there's 3 different ways to value a company. There's 2 classical methods that those of us who went to business school learned, which is discounted cash flow or net asset value or something like that. But the truth is that most of the time it's a lifestyle valuation. Guy wakes up in the morning and says, I make X number of dollars a year. If I'm going to quit doing this, I still need to make X number of dollars per year. So I need to create an instrument that provides that kind of cash. And that's generally what we're looking with at valuation. So a seller's got to try to figure out what they need to go on with their life, whatever stage they're at. And there really is no formula for that. From a buyer's perspective, we're going to look at it from what we have to invest in a return on capital invested and see if that return is consistent with what we've been earning from our existing assets. Otherwise, and Ross can tell you this because I've turned down many deals he's brought to me, it just doesn't work.
Actually, your valuation on terms of the seller is a very interesting one because it's really true, isn't it? It's like buying a car or something. No matter what you buy it for, someone was always going to tell you they could have got it cheaper. And so once a person has sold their company, I suppose they then face the rest of their life of someone saying they sold it too cheap, no matter what.
And no matter what. And quite frankly, to take your car analogy one step further, one of the big mistakes that gets made is that generally there's no Carfax in what we do.
Yeah. That's a really, it's a very important thing that it sounds rather simple, but there is no real way of valuing a private company.
Right. And you can't see the dings Most of the time, it takes a long time to find out where the accident's been and where the dings are in a company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, and that's where the due diligence comes in. What kinds of things do you do to prepare yourself for that process of determining valuation? Is there a set formula that you use, or does it depend on the company? How do you approach that?
We actually approach it consistently every single time. We'll go through with the seller before we actually, make a deal, an enormous list of things that we're interested: sales, profits, customer lists, inventory valuation, et cetera. We'll go through all that, and most of the time, not even in person. Then we have one person who's on our financial team that'll spend a day to 2 days with the potential seller doing a pre-game due diligence, where they'll go down their list and say, okay, let me see what you got here. Let me see what you got there. Let me see what you have here, to see if what they're going to give us for due diligence is going to support what we need. Because the last thing you need is to send 2 or 3 people to a location and they show up and there's not enough work for them to do. Usually in that pre-due diligence meeting, we find out whether we've really got a fit. When we actually go into due diligence, that's when we finish that off. But we look at hundreds of things if we can. We have a list that's 4 or 5 times as long as we usually can get, because we're just nosy. We're trying to find that accident waiting to happen.
Yep.
It's our version of our Carfax.
Okay.
The hardest thing is to not get, what we call deal fatigue. Deal fatigue happens because it's really boring and it's really time consuming to go through the legal and due diligence process. And so we try to keep it simple. We are buying small companies. It is a serious purchase for us. I mean, we're spending 7 figures generally. And when you do that, you want to make sure you get your money's worth. But when you do that, you have to find every little thing you can and document it as well as you can. So that's when it gets tedious.
Sure. And I guess there's also a TSA component to it as well.
It does feel like that. That's for sure.
Indeed. In my experience, I think for some of the things Buddy's observing about making sure you're doing due diligence to, catch downside risk before you transact, sellers who navigate through due diligence as honestly and comfortably openly as they can, in my experience, do themselves a big favor, because if there are negative surprises that come out in the 8th or 9th inning of that whole process, it's a big waste of time for everybody. And so I think part of the work for sellers is to, understand that a buyer wants to understand the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, as graciously as that can be explained, but transparently and credibly, it usually goes a long way, not only in building trust, but it makes sure that all the information's out on the table that a buyer really needs to get comfortable and really get to a real value perspective on what they're buying.
Right. Well, it's clear that needs a lot of attention, and there's a lot of time there. It's just a process that has to be performed. But doing due diligence incorrectly, valuation, if you don't make a big mistake there, what else is there to watch out for? Are there any classic problems that we have to avoid when we're talking M&A?
Yeah, Buddy already pointed out a couple of the classic ones. I mean, the obvious ones are, people overpay on the buyer side. Sellers sometimes think that they got paid less than what they should have and have, seller's remorse. Those are classic. I think underestimating integration effort that's required after a purchase. I think, Buddy's pointed out that over the years he's learned how to create smoothness from integration in a robust and methodical way. So you got to be clear about what's involved, not just leading up to the transaction, but after it. As best you can, you have to, on the buyer side, you've got to make sure that you understand the business that you're buying. And I would say also that, until you've transacted and you're integrating and you're really starting to drive someone else's business, it's impossible to understand all of that. But as best you can, you have to make sure that the core business rationale is there. The temptation on deals that are going the wrong way to stick it out if the sunk cost of how much time and effort has been put in, I think sometimes the mistake is made on either or both sides to not simply acknowledge that and walk away. the discipline and knowing on the buyer side as you walk into acquisition opportunities that you're willing to do that and reminding yourself to do that, I think is important. It will be far more work after the transaction if you know it's not right to undo it or to have to live with something that didn't make sense. There are other things. An obvious one that fortunately is pretty rare, but fraud. Were you was there misinformation or did somebody lie as part of the transaction? So that's part of getting comfortable and doing due diligence. And the market timing equation certainly has something to do with overpaying or underpaying. And so, buyers and sellers are always trying to, figure out where they are in market timing. Sometimes sometimes it's incredibly obvious, and at other times you just have no idea. As Buddy said, having just gone through, one of the worst recession in our lifetimes, it's pretty clear where we were, 18 months ago in market timing, meaning we were at the deep bottom. But other times it's just not clear.
Sure.
So there are a number of things on the big mistake list, and I think the process is trying to be thoughtful about it, recognizing that, no deal is perfect, but you try to get to something that feels like both a business fit, a strategy fit, and a cultural fit.
Okay, now assuming you've got you've acquired a company or merged with one, then the most important factor, I guess, in making sure that the money that you've spent is not wasted is making sure that the new organization has a very smooth transition to the new leadership model. How do you decide, and what is the best way of doing that?
The most important thing, I'll go back to it again, it's just one of my rules. The seller has to decide what role they want to play, and that role has to be decided up front and before the transaction gets done. And everybody has to agree to it, and everybody has to be happy with it. If they're not, and if they don't, then all kinds of problems will occur from that moment on. Or from the moment the transaction closes, more trouble will occur. And so everything that we do in the preparation process, in the due diligence process, is similar to what I experience every day and Ross experiences every day. I'm the CEO of a company. I'm responsible for the lives of many, many families financially. Everything I do, everything I say is being analyzed every moment of the day. And so the seller must appreciate that everything he says, everything he does, all of his body languages is going to be evaluated by us as we go forward. And we, quite frankly, won't make any mistakes around that area. We can't be fooled in those areas anymore. We can tell pretty quickly whether somebody's really cooperative or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think to add to that, and from a standpoint of what makes sort of post-integration successful, I think, Buddy used the word advocate, and I think the best deals on the post-integration side tend to happen when you have a willing, helpful seller where the deal that's struck feels fair on both sides, the rationale is sound, but you also have a seller who can act as comfortably and willingly act as an advocate for the success of the business going forward. And that's true whether they remain on in a 6-month transition or they're in a 3-year contract and then opt out after that. But I think even in watching the transaction that Buddy went through last spring, when you have a leader from a business you acquire who is willing and happily helping and knows that the ship is now being sailed by somebody else, it makes a huge difference. And that seller, whether they stay for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, can continue to be a key component of growing value and growth. And so that's a real key question that everybody's got to get comfortable with. And when it works right, it can be terrific on both sides.
Another question for you, Ross. I'm a company. I'm looking to sell or I'm considering it. What should I do? How do I get in touch with you?
Well, you can find me via our website at redideapartners.com, just to give you a practical answer. And to give you a more general answer, if you're a seller and you're starting to think about this, a lot of who you pick to help you depends on how aggressive you want to be in looking at your options and your size. If you're a tiny business but a sellable, successful business, you may have to do a lot of that on your own, and you may have to work your own network. and look for some natural, combinations and try to think about who might want to acquire you. Often that means that a competitor may be interested in you. So you kind of have to make your short list of competitors that you could fathom talking to comfortably, and those that you may want to rule out just because it wouldn't be something you'd be comfortable with. Non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality are very important as you start to have those conversations, especially on the seller side. If you're a small to mid-sized company, you may engage with a consultant like us. You may engage with a business broker. And if you're a medium to large company, typically if you're private or you're large enough to be a public business, you may be working formally with an investment bank. So you have a variety of options. And as sellers get to those steps, usually the best advice about how to make those steps is from your advisor. If you have advisors formally, lawyers and accountants and key people on your team who you feel comfortable starting to talk about the topic with, are people who can be sources of expertise about how to make the right selection of how to go on that sort of search.
And I'll just repeat that website once again to get in contact with Ross to discuss this further, or even to connect with Buddy. You can review his information at the website www.redideapartners.com. Also, if you want to take a look at the Active Screw website, that's at www.activescrew.com. It's been a great conversation, gentlemen, and I really appreciate you sharing some of your insights and wisdom with us. I expect that you're going to be pretty busy throughout 2011 if this trend continues, don't you expect?
We think so. And Eric and Brian, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Brian. Buddy, thanks for being part of this. And I do think 2011 is likely to heat up. And as you said, Eric, if you have anybody in your listening audience who wants to get in touch with Red Idea, that'd be great. And specifically, Buddy mentioned we are helping Active currently and aggressively scout around the country for companies that may be a fit. Typically, we're talking to businesses that are between 1 and 10 million in annual revenues in terms of fastener distributors. And my firm is happy to talk in more detail with somebody who might like to talk about a conversation with Active, and we appreciate you giving us a chance to talk about both that campaign as well as talk a little bit more about merger and acquisitions.
Rochelle, that is good information to have. And both of you, Buddy Blattner, thanks for being with us again.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for Todd Walters on FTR.
This is Tom Buddenbone. I am the membership chair for the NFDA and the partner in Technology Components Southwest. I'd like to invite you to consider membership in the NFDA. Some of the benefits to membership include tremendous industry networking, business education via the Institute for Trend Research, economic insights with the quarterly trend reports from a service that's provided to us, global perspective when buying and selling all over the world, tremendous benefit in information sources from Asia and Europe, gives you an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with other members, both suppliers and distributors. We offer an annual meeting that has ESPS session, which are a series of 30-minute scheduled meetings with existing companies you do business with, and more importantly, for companies that you don't do business with and want to learn a little more about. Our goal is to gain new members, both distributors and associates or manufacturers and large importers. And we also want to invite back those that have dropped out of NFDA in the past due to some of the economic issues of the past couple of years. It's a great association with great members. Please take a peek at www.nfda-fastener.org, or you can call the office for NFDA at area code 312-673-4900. Thank you again, Tom Buddenbone with Technology Components and the NFDA.
This is John Butler with K&L Sales, your source for fastening technologies. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We talk to all sorts of folks on Fully Threaded Radio. Those of you who have listened in the past know that we talk to everything from captains of industry, consultants, manufacturers, importers, distributors. And we thought it might be appropriate to bring in yet another type of fastener person into the mix on this episode. And today we're going to be talking to Todd Walters, and he is currently a representative of that group that's unfortunately more and more common in the industry these days, and that is he's playing the role of gun for hire. Isn't that right, Todd?
Professional in transition.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That sounds better, actually.
Welcome to Fully Threaded, Todd.
Thank you.
Why don't we get things kicked off for folks who haven't worked with you in the past or haven't met you at one of the many shows? You've been a fixture in the industry for a long, long while. Give us a little bit of background, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I got started in the industry close to 20 years ago, working for a distributor, and I remember when I came home from the interview, I said, nuts and bolts. I don't know how anybody can make a living in that type of business, but I'll take the job until I find something else. And that's pretty much where I've been ever since. The distributor that I went to work for was known for selling high-performance screws, thread rolling screws, thread cutting screws, primarily small diameter product to OEM customers. And so for the first 10 years that I was in the business, that was pretty much what I sold, was everything from an 80 up to about 5/8 diameter. Had really not much experience with any larger diameter product because snowmobiles and air conditioners and all types of products like that were primarily assembled with the smaller diameter product. And then I took a leap into an industry that I really had not much experience in at all, and that was the structural market. And of course, in the structural market, you pretty much start at 5/8 diameter and go up from there.
Right.
So it was a bit of a culture shock, and it provided a good learning experience. Again, I was in the distribution of that for 4 or 5 years, and then took a step and went to work for a hot former company that they also have cold forming equipment, but they're probably best known for their hot forging up to 2-inch diameter. And stuck with them for a while and was approached by a very prestigious named company and asked if I would be interested in working for them, calling on distributors. And the opportunity seemed like a fantastic one, so I jumped on it. And that went well for a while, and then the economy went into the toilet.
Right.
And business, after the 2008 Fastener show, business, I think, across the board in the fastener industry really went down for some time, and I was fortunate to be able to stick with it throughout the rest of 2008 and 2009, but at the beginning of 2010, there were a few more changes made in the organization, and I went on the market for a while. Came back up for the last 6 months or so of 2010 with a company out of Taiwan, which also had a very good reputation in the industry, a very large manufacturer, a lot of employees, a lot of output capacity. But once again, it was still in a focus more toward the structural side of the industry, and nobody is building anything right now. Structural manufacturers and structural distributors across the country are any one of them could tell you that business is just not where they would like it to be right now.
No, there's a little bit of construction going on in the south, I think, but we see that in the way the inquiries come whizzing through FCH.
As far as people wanting to liquidate structural inventory?
No, just in terms of searches and where where the searches really are, and the various fastener distributors, which ones see a bit of activity in the structural world. And that's across the south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to agree based on what I'd seen, in the last 6 months of 2010, is that most any major construction was going on. It seemed to be a lot actually in Texas, more so probably than anywhere. California was really drying up. The Northeast, there was not a lot going on, and there's been a push over the last 2 years probably to really try to buy American on anything, and so that really helps a few of the structural fastener manufacturers. But again, there is only a few left in the United States, so it's a boon for them, and then a bust for most everybody else when it comes to trying to get in on those projects.
Right. Some of the structural workers, I guess, in the auto industry. I mean, there's some new auto plants going in Alabama, I think, in that area.
Yeah, I knew that actually there was a few good-sized projects going on a couple of years ago. I guess I hadn't heard of any new ones lately. I think probably the largest commercial steel construction project that may still be in the works was a primary steel plant in the south of Alabama, and I'm trying to remember if it was Metal or if it was a joint venture with another steel company.
Well, you're a survivor, and you're out looking, and you're using some social networking tools that are available. And I was really curious, since you're doing this and you're in the fastener industry using some of the channels that are developing now, social networking wise, what are your experiences? How are you using these tools? What are you using, and how does it seem to be going? What are your impressions?
Well, overall, my impression is that there's very few people interested in hiring at this particular moment. I have been using tools such as LinkedIn. There are some search sites or search engines that put out daily emails, such as sites like Indeed or Simply Hired, and those kind of sites that they crawl the web and search for whatever keywords you've keyed in as far as a search. So you can you'll get an email every day on, like say for instance, fastener sales, and you can sort of see the ebb and flow of how help wanted ads or those kinds of things are put out, because some days there might be 4 new listings, some days there might be 11, some days there might be 1 as far as, new postings or new job positions that are posted. But a lot of times it's, an inside salesperson wanted for a fastener distributor in Statesville, North Carolina, or something like that. So not that relocation is an issue, but you have to be realistic on what type of job you would be willing to relocate for.
What area are you looking to operate out of ideally right now, Todd?
The central United States has pretty much been the area that I have worked, both in the hot forging business and in the standards market. Any place from Salt Lake City to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the most recent assignment I had with the Taiwan manufacturer was basically the 35 states from Denver to the East Coast. So
okay, it's a fairly big area.
Yeah, it gives you time to see some different country.
And now that you have Internet Fastener Radio, you can definitely keep in touch with the industry while you travel.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So a question, Todd, given your experience at the moment, and whether people will leave out whether they're hiring or not, but the method of looking for these opportunities, how do you see it as having changed over the years?
Oh, well, the internet obviously has changed everything. The last time that I was in transition for a relatively extended period of time was 1991,
Wow. Okay.
And of course, I wasn't even aware of the ability to get a dial-up connection in 1991. In fact,
it actually wouldn't have done you much good even if you did have one in 1991. I think you had
every resume that I had to submit in 1991 was on an electric typewriter.
Right.
So I was very selective about how many resumes I was sending out at that point. And now, with say a tool like LinkedIn, you're basically able to post your resume, or at least a summary of it, right there on the page where anybody and everybody can see it. It gives you I haven't upgraded to the premium version of LinkedIn, but even with the standard version I have, you can see through different days how many people have viewed your profile on LinkedIn in say the last 7 days. And I've had it anywhere from 1 person to 12 or 15 in the course of a 7-day period. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of reading too, in terms of the noise, if you will, how much activity is going on out there in terms of people sort of looking.
Well, of course, there always was activity, because even in 1991, as you noted beforehand, Al Gore had already invented the internet, so it did exist then. No one else knew it existed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was existed. The Defense Department had it, and Tim Berners-Lee was working away in Geneva, dreaming up what we now know as the whole internet, actually.
Well, yeah, I know that to one degree or another, that sort of thing, obviously there's been versions of it going back some time. My brother went into the Navy in 1975, and he went into IT with the Navy. He was a cryptologic technician.
Right.
And so there was high security computer type stuff going on that long ago, but it did take another 20 years for it to really manifest itself in the public.
Right.
Yeah, back in those days they were using SGML, right? Remember that? Standardized General Markup Language, and HTML was a subset of that language.
Correct. That was for attempting to dream up standardized documentation.
And there's our propeller head moment for the show.
Right. And remember, this thing people used to dial up into, like news group things, weren't they? I forget.
Usenet, right?
Yeah, used to use them, and there was the thing called the WAIS, the Wide Area Information System, that Apple had dreamed up. So there was all sorts of stuff quietly going on, but none of us that we could use it.
And fast forward to today. Now, Todd, you haven't mentioned any of the companies that you've been involved with, but all that's available really on your information on LinkedIn, and your LinkedIn name is Todd Walters. It couldn't be easier, right?
Yeah, or as we were discussing in our warm-up session, if you Google experienced fastener professional, I'm about the third entry on page 2 of the Google hits.
Yeah, and that's, of course, an ever-shifting ranking. Hopefully it's moving up.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
That's correct. I think the last I looked, I was actually a little bit flattered, because I think I was a few entries above John Gray, and John Gray is certainly an experienced fastener professional as well.
Right.
But it's at the same time a little disappointing, because I think some of the first hits are sites for being able to buy staples online at Walmart.
Right. Well, they put a lot more attention than you or we do into making sure they sit up the front of everything. Okay, there's teams and teams and teams of people working continuously. So
attention among other things, Bry.
Right.
A few bucks may be going their way as well,
True. And yeah, a lot of people and a lot of money. Okay.
Well, I guess we've set the table here for kind of like a guy with the golden voice moment for you, Todd. I hope that works out. Last time I talked to you in person, it was at the Vegas show. And
Yep.
Do you have any observations or comments on trends you're seeing in the industry based on that and since then? I mean, what should we be watching from your perspective?
Well, I was happy with the show. It seemed like there was a relatively good turnout. Looking back at the numbers, it was better than the prior year. I think the pinnacle in terms of attendance for the show was the 2008 show, and it was certainly a high point as far as what I can recall from being there. 2008, it seemed like there was rarely a time that you weren't talking to somebody, and the aisles were fairly full. And then I think looking at the numbers, 2009 dropped off a fair amount, but that's probably no surprise.
No, you're totally right there.
Well, it was a time, we were all living in a sort of a dream world, I suppose, in hindsight, okay? We saw it start dropping perilously back in, I guess it was the end of 2008 ourselves, and it really dived down very quickly.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing that the week after the show this year, the company that I was with, as well as a few other companies, all sort of made some corrections. Another friend of mine with another company had called me the same day that I was put into transition mode, and said that he also was finding himself in the same position. And at the time, actually, I think I had sort of being a bit of a smart aleck, had put my current position as the most experienced fastener professional in the unemployment office. And then after I talked to my friend who's been in the business for about 15 years longer than me, I as a deference to his experience, went in and changed that, because then I knew that I wasn't the most experienced.
Gentlemen, even in humor.
Yep, you have to keep your sense of humor above all. So,
well, hopefully, I guess you must have looked at things enough to assume that even the basic indications are that the economy, and hopefully for the fastener companies as well, will improve over this year.
Yeah, it's what I hear as a recurring theme, is that production of durable goods are on the rise, and most fastener companies are seeing an uptick in business. Although I think in terms of on the structural side of it, I believe that they are probably going to lag behind. You're not going to see a lot of additional consumption in structural fasteners probably for another year and a half, because as we saw, from the supply side, we saw that the first downturn toward the end of 08 and into the beginning of 09 was in just your standard commodity fasteners, machine screws, hex head cap screws, and those sort of things. That was where the business fell off first. The steel construction projects, where the bids had already been made, the funding had already been approved, the drawings had already been done, the consumption of the structural fasteners sort of seemed to continue. And then they didn't fall off until probably about 3 or 4 quarters after the initial downturn. And I had attended an open house at a company that provides steel detailing software. And basically, they had said that would be the wave, is that the construction market will fall off, and then when the rest of the economy picks back up and standard fasteners rise in consumption, that the structural fastener probably won't come back for 3 or 4 quarters after that. So,
wow, that's sort of a lag, isn't it?
That seems to be the reality. And really, it may even be longer, because, looking at the state of the economy right now, there's probably not even a lot of steel work on the drawing boards right now. And once the plans hit the detailers and everybody starts figuring out how many bolts go in this new building, that's a phase of the construction process where you're not going to see the actual parts being demanded by the fabricators or the erectors for months down the road. So I think you might see second or third quarter of 2012 before before a lot of demand comes back in the structural market.
Well, let's leave it there, and with that, we'll wish you a lot of luck in finding a position out there. There's something for you, Todd, and we just got to make sure that you land on it.
Well, appreciate it. Yeah, I wish I had more of a golden voice. Maybe I could be the voice of the Cavaliers.
Right.
or get that gig in Hawaii that they were going to send Ted Williams out to interview for or whatever. I think I could probably handle that.
Now you're talking, man. Dream big. Well, all right. Thanks for joining us, Todd Walters, and boy, we wish you the best of luck.
You bet. Thank you.
Stay tuned for today's exciting finale. Up next.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from distributors.com, and FT8 works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt for the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, www.semperfifund.org. Over the past 7 years, twice a year, the wonderful people who operate the Semper Fi Fund and many amazing Marines who have been the beneficiaries of the charities that have supported the Semper Fi Fund, including many thousands of individual donors, have come into my radio studio to tell their amazing stories of serving their country, of being wounded, and how the Semper Fi Fund has helped them make that transition back to recovery. Unfortunately, Bethesda and Walter Reed are full again. More and more men and women are coming back from the war injured, sometimes awfully so. We need the Semper Fi Fund to be there for these Marines and those soldiers, sailors, and airmen who served alongside of them. Please consider a gift to the Semper Fi Fund. Very low overhead, extraordinary capacity to get money where it needs to get in a hurry, and great management, including some of the senior Marines who've ever served under the flag. When you're looking for something to do that will make an impact, please check out the Semper Fi Fund. That's www.semperfifund.org, www.semperfifund.org.
Hi, this is Rich Cavona with Metric and Multi-Standard, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric, two golden voices in the fastener industry, back with you.
Fully Threaded Radio.
That's right.
I don't consider mine quite so golden, okay?
Well, when you're in a position like Todd Walters, it must feel like you don't have very much of a golden voice at all, but you got to keep at it and you got to keep pushing, you know. It's tough times and a lot of people are feeling the effects.
Yeah. Now, just a note about Todd. He did email us a correction to one of the comments that was made in the interview, and we were discussing a large contract down in Alabama, and it was a tribute to the Mittal Group, but actually it was Tyson Krupp AG, and it was announced back in 2007.
Well, let's hope that's generating some demand down that way, or maybe that's really the cause of what's floating everything down that way. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it was a mixture. Well, it's probably slowed a bit now, but it was a mixture of a bit of resurgence in the automotive industry, actually, and they were building new plants around there. Plus, there's a lot of activity in Texas, I think, was in the petroleum industry.
Well, Todd's analysis of the lag of the resurgence of the structural segment was pretty interesting. I hadn't heard that analysis before.
Yes, but I guess if you think about it, it's probably sort of true. I mean, buildings are planned well in advance, and there's a big time scale involved, in building something. So,
right. Now speaking of lags, on our other segment today, I wonder if there's going to be kind of a delayed effect of this tough economy, kind of on the companies that are looking to sell out or to acquire or merge. And I think that was kind of what Buddy was insinuating there when he was saying they expected a pretty robust 2011 from his point of view. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it seems fair to me. And I think one of the really interesting things that I took away from his interview was really the point about how you revalue a company that's a private company. I mean, there's no published figures for you to go by because being a private company, you don't have to publish figures. How do you value your company? Everyone has to strike that at some stage. It sounds easy and it's really hard.
Well, it doesn't sound easy to me. It's one of these things you have to agree to the value, and there's a million formulas you could use. Hopefully, you can strike a balance and reach a figure that everyone thinks is fair. And I realize that that isn't always the case. Usually, somebody feels like they got the short end of the stick, but such is the nature of business.
Yeah, I myself have been in a company that was acquired and then was acquired in other companies, and so I've seen both ends of it, and it's something that has to be managed really carefully, and if you do it right, it can be really, really positive. I enjoyed being a part of it.
Well, one group of people who love it are the software salesmen, I could tell you that much.
Right, in our companies at that time too.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty universal. I guess we'll take this opportunity to thank our guests, Buddy Blattner of Active Screw and Fastener, and also Ross Schell of Red Idea Partners, Todd Walters, who's currently a gun for hire in the fastener market, so catch him on LinkedIn if he sounds like somebody you need to talk to, and of course, Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International. Great job, by the way, Mike, on the presentation, including some reference to beer and tattoos. Excellently done.
Right. Very good.
We look forward to hearing from you folks, so don't hesitate. You can reach us by email at the address ftr@fullythreaded.com. And also check out our Twitter posts, which come out every now and then under the handle Fully Threaded.
And remember that you can always subscribe to the Fully Threaded podcast in a number of different ways, mainly by going to the site. You can click on the things and listen to them there. You can click on the link and subscribe through your iPhone, or if you have a BlackBerry, you can use the podcast application on the BlackBerry to subscribe to Fully Threaded there. So we cover pretty much all the bases.
That's right, and we are available from iTunes, so iTunes users, you can get out there and subscribe. We do appreciate everybody who takes the time to do that, and of course it is the simplest way to make sure you never miss an episode.
Right, why would you want to?
Can't think of a reason myself.
Nor can I.
I should also take a moment to thank Mike McGuire. He did quite a post. I wonder how many people actually read it because they were diverted with holidays. But his Christmas Eve post, he really outdid himself on the tidbits, and he gave us a nice mention. Nice job on that one, Mike. And, I do enjoy those posts just about as much as anything.
And I'll tell you, there was another really interesting post from the traveling salesman. Speaking of holiday posts, it was on New Year's Day. And he had a great post about the Generation Y, which has, I guess, confounds a lot of people, but it was sort of a pretty positive one. And it really, in my own opinion, is one of the reasons we see such a really increase in the usage of the web to source fasteners. In my mind, a lot of that influence is coming from the younger people and a lot of the fastener companies who are so much more comfortable using the web to do things. So if you want to catch up with that, you can go into fastenerblog.net and catch up on the traveling salesman.
Yeah, I saw that post, and he actually had somebody who replied to it that kind of said, yeah, well, we're out here and we lurk, and you just have to stimulate us the right way, and lo and behold, we come out and play. I'm glad for all those guys too, because they don't really jump in unless you really send something right down the middle of the alley for them. But
no, that's true, and I also think that going with that is it shows you the fastener industry has a really quite an interesting depth, because it goes from the people who acknowledge that they have a lot to learn yet to some of the old, or more venerated members of the industry, some of whom we've met. I mean, I remember the great discussion I had at Rosemont with one well-known member of the fastener industry who explained at great length to me the difference between just a simple black-looking cap screw and one that was black oxide. Great lesson I have not forgotten.
And, of course, they're all welcome in the FCH Sourcing Network.
Yeah.
And with that, why don't we call episode 17 one for the books?
Do it.
For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fastener's Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?